Always a pleasure to visit with Kevin Harlan, Dial Global. He'll be calling the AFC title game on our flagship station, Extra Sports 910. This weekend, of course, he's with CBS, NBA, TNT, does March Madness. He does just a plethora of events. He joins us for a couple of minutes. Kevin, right off the top, your reaction, Chip Kelly, head coach, Philadelphia Eagles.
Well, I feel sorry for those kids that have signed with Oregon, or are going to sign with Oregon here in a couple weeks. A lot of kids, that's a program that is nationally known. They've built up a pretty good deal of momentum up there, and the guy probably put a scare in him a couple weeks ago when he was looking at schools and said, no, I want to stay here, and boom, he goes again. And so these kids, I'm sure, are going to scramble a little bit, and they've given the verbal. But like I said, they'll sign, in 13, 14 days, so I'm guessing they're going to lose some people and probably go to some other schools. But for the NFL, they get an innovative coach in Philadelphia. I think that Jeffrey Lohr was beginning to panic a little bit because he looked around and all the names were gone. It wasn't a great list to begin with, and this is certainly the biggest name among the college coaches, Brian Kelly at Notre Dame. So Chip Kelly goes there. I think they like his innovative style. We're having all offensive coaches hired. Trestman, offensive coach in Chicago. We have Marone, who was a one-time New Orleans coordinator. He's up in Buffalo. We have Andy Reid, moving from Philly to Kansas City, offensive coach. So it seems like that becomes the theme and is the theme for all these openings in the NFL.
He brings a buzz, though, to this whole search. And I'm sitting here in Arizona where today we have a couple of coordinators. They still have not hired their coach, but the Chip Kelly hire to Philadelphia, I think, just sends shockwaves through everybody today.
I agree. I mean, college football, not to be excluded here. I mean, this is a big move, and not unlike when Saban left LSU to go to Miami to the Dolphins, and I think that Chip Kelly really kind of had it all. Now, of course, the rumblings are that the NCAA is about ready to pounce on that program, and he may be one step ahead of the mob, so to speak, and getting out of there. But he sure leaves that program at a difficult time when he leaves right before, the signing date, which is coming up, as I mentioned before, and do that. It's kind of like these kids now. Buyer beware. Just wherever you're going to go, just know that there's no guarantee that coach is going to stay, and that's why the coaches always try to push the program overall and the school itself. And I can appreciate that. But the Eagles get a guy, I think, that they feel that they can be. He's a young man. He's only 49, so he's got time on his side and certainly a reputation. His reputation is so far, in fact, in his innovative look at offense that Eric Spoelstra, the Miami Heat coach, before last year's championship season, spent a week up there in August watching his practices because he wanted to get a feel of how he was able to move so fast with his players from play to play on the offensive play calling, how they stayed in their lanes, how they spread the field, the quickness and the speed with which they work, and how he could transplant that to the NBA, which worked, as obviously worked for Kelly up at Oregon.
Kevin Harlan, CBS, NBA, TNT, Dial Global this weekend, AFC title game, Ravens and Patriots. The storylines for you, do you put more preparation into your boards and in your conversations this week, Kevin, into Brady Flacco, or how much more into Ray Lewis, potentially his final game?
Well, I think the headline is certainly Brady Flacco, a rematch of last year, a team that's not going to flinch in Baltimore going to New England. I think a lot of teams are overwhelmed by playing up there and Brady and Belichick and all that stadium and that whole atmosphere conveys. But I don't think this team will at all because of what Flacco has done, what the team has done. They beat him earlier this year, coming from behind to beat him, and of course they played him toe-to-toe last year. And Flacco outplayed Brady. So I think they come in without an ounce of pressure on him. But the overriding story, the bigger, maybe long-lasting story, is that this could be Ray Lewis's last game. And I'll tell you this, I think that a lot of these teams are very equal in so many ways. They're all flawed in some ways. They're all equal in most ways. It's a play here, play there, as we always hear these coaches talk about turnovers and so on. But when you look for those intangibles that a team can grab onto, I think two that are very prominent for Baltimore, which is the underdog, is that they're not going to feel any pressure, as I mentioned before, and that Ray Lewis and the theme he has set with his oncoming retirement is probably, giving this team something else to rally around, not the least of which is just playing for a chance to go to the Super Bowl. It's now playing for their undisputed leader, and I think that carries a lot of weight. These guys. The game that you're looking for motivation sometimes. You're looking for that extra push if you don't have it already. But sometimes, kind of the intangible of losing a long-time presence in the locker room can play a huge role. I think it did last week. I think it did the week before against the Colts, and I think it's going to have some kind of place in the game against the New England Patriots. So So yeah, I think Ray Lewis is a big headline going in, as he will be, even if he goes to New Orleans in a couple of weeks in the Super Bowl.
And I like how in New England they're having fun with this. It was tweeted out about an hour ago that there's billboards now that say Ray's retirement party that have been purchased up in New England, and they have a clock on them, Kevin. I kid you not.
Like that.
It was Darren Ravel that tweeted it out, and it has a countdown clock that it says Ray's retirement party billboard begins in 4 days, 6 hours, 55 minutes. So I mean, look, this is what we can talk about, the Ray Lewis that you've, with CBS through the years, you've done dozens of Ray Lewis games.
Yes.
You've visited with Ray Lewis, I'm sure, dozens of time in prep meetings. But you're coming into this in a completely different environment, I think. On top of the playoff game, it's that this guy could go, and the people in New England are more concerned about him than even Flacco or Bolden or the offense.
Well, his skill level has certainly eroded at this age. You know, he's 37 years old. He's played 17 years in the league, and you know, he's not the same player. And we know he's incredibly injured. I can't believe there's been very much of any kind of healing in the slight tear of his tricep. So we know that thing is torn. The hinged brace is on. There's so much he can do in the pass defense game. We know in the run game he's racking up some big numbers. So the motivation he's showing, the courage he's showing to play is pretty formidable. And I think, again, that serves as another beacon for that Baltimore team. But yeah, you know, whenever you get big names in a game, it's always fun to kind of circle those guys as the tip of the spear, so to speak. The guys that you lead off with when you start talking about the Baltimore Ravens or the New England Patriots. And when you talk about Green Bay, you talk about Aaron Rodgers, and when it's San Francisco, now I guess the story is Colin Kaepernick. I'm not sure. He's become a pretty good story. But when you talk about Baltimore, you talk about Ray Lewis, you talk about the Patriots. It's Belichick and Brady. So that's where you begin the conversation. Then you work your way and navigate the different parts of the teams and what this game could be. The stakes are incredibly high. It's kind of the perfect storm, really, to begin with, because it could be so final in a couple different ways for the Ravens, or they could extend this great story and really make it, you know, even more of a story. In a couple weeks, should they make it to the Super Bowl in his last season? I mean, arguably, Ray Lewis is going to go down as one of the top 5 linebackers ever to play in the NFL. Some people think he's the best defensive player ever to play in the NFL, and I think that's somewhat debatable. But certainly in terms of linebackers, that name has got to be in that conversation with the first couple that you rattle off. So, you know, his fingerprints are all over, you know, pro football history. Now the question is, can they continue to have somewhat of a Ray Lewis, you know, even though he's a shadow of what he once was, play to a high level with that team, and can the courage he's shown and the legacy he leaves, you know, play a part in that emotional strand, which I think is going to run through the Ravens when they come in there. Like I said, even if Lewis weren't there, I still don't think they blink when they go into Foxborough and play that team. They know they can beat them. They know they can play them well in the biggest of games, so they go in there, you know, where most people thought they would never go. People thought they were going to lose last week to Manning in Denver, and they win that. And the other thing people ask are, do they have enough in the tank? And I think, yeah, I think that's what this Lewis thing does. I think it just continues to propel you from week to week. It's not the aura of a win and the carryover of that. It's that certainly, but also is playing for Ray.
Kevin Harlan with us. He'll be doing the play-by-play, the AFC title game, Dial Global, right here on Extra Sports 910, also with CBS and the NBA and TNT. One other question about this game and your preparation. It seems as though Bill Belichick could look at Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis, and say, you want all this money? Well, we're not going to re-sign you, and we're just going to go find some other people to plug in. The guys that he's plugged in this year, if you could just look at that side of what Bill Belichick has done with this Patriots team.
Well, good question, and they've got these 2 kids that one's a 1,000-yard rusher and Stephen Ridley. The other kid's a kid named Shane Vereen, and the only way Vereen saw any time the other day was when Woodhead got injured. Woodhead was cut by the Jets, has prospered with the New England Patriots. Wes Welker was undrafted. He was let go by San Diego years ago, went to Miami. They didn't think enough of him, and they traded him to a divisional rival, the New England Patriots, and all he's done is set NFL records. I mean, NFL records, not Patriot records, but league records with the number of catches and what he's done in a very short window. So those guys have all been terrific, and whenever players have kind of scoffed, whether it's been Richard Seymour many years ago or last year Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis, you know, Belichick says, we'll find somebody else. The system is bigger than the player. Brady aside, the system is bigger than the player, and that's kind of how they've gone at it. And so when they lose a Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis, they plug in this Ridley. He gets over 1,000 yards on the ground, and then when Woodhead goes down, they stick in this guy named Shane Vereen, and he has 3 touchdowns last week and becomes as versatile as Ray Rice. So, the ability of people always are kind of skeptical when you start talking about Belichick and just how good a coach he is.
Right.
I think he's on the Mount Rushmore of coaches. I mean, I really do. I've been around the league. It's my 28th consecutive year calling NFL games, and when you're around that long, you get history from teams, you get history of the league, you cover the league, you know what it's all about as well. I just don't know how you can't include Belichick with the top 4 or 5 names ever to coach in pro football. He's been innovative, he has changed with the times, he's ridden a good quarterback and made him even better than he probably could have been someplace else. It's been a revolving door of players. He drafts, he signs players off the street, he suits them up, and they all play in this Patriot way, which is just do your job and don't worry about extending what you're supposed to. If you follow our teaching, if you watch our coaching and follow it to a T, we will be successful. And he's got these players thinking that way, and so you got the longevity of success, which is virtually unmatched in pro football. Certainly now, with all the years of success they've had.
Right. Appreciate the visit and the time, Kevin. Thank you very much.
Take care. Thank you.